Hi there, hope you're having a wonderful day. I've got a question for you. Have you ever heard the saying that a parent is a child's first and most influential teacher? It's a well-known quote. It's actually true, but now with the increasing self-isolation, many Aussie parents are looking for help with preparing for homeschooling and remote learning. So if you are looking for support and helpful tips on how you can assist your children with their distant learning, you're definitely in the right place. So today we are joined by our special guest, Dr. Selina Samuels. Now, Dr. Selina Samuels is an experienced educator and Chief Learning Officer at Cluey Learning. She's been in education for over 3 decades and has held leadership and advisory roles for almost 20 of those years. Now, today she's going to share her top tips for maintaining continuity and learning at home, something that I'm sure parents all around Australia are eager to hear. Now, thank you for joining us, Dr. Samuels. How are you?
I'm very well, Rachel, and I'm very delighted to be able to join you.
Oh, well, we're very, very honoured and grateful for your time. And you really are a godsend to many parents at the moment. And it's really wonderful that you are extending your help to Aussie parents through Kiddipedia with your tips and advice. And with no doubt, there's parents that are concerned everywhere, but you're going to be able to help them today. Now, to begin with, a lot of parents at this time may feel unqualified to step into the role of a teacher, and or maybe are feeling anxious to follow the distant learning packs that the government has provided. With full respect to our teachers who do an amazing job and put many years of study to obtaining their qualifications, I guess this feeling is sort of understandable. But I just wanted to initially just ask, with the difference between the two, between a parent and a teacher, what advice do you have for a parent that has worries or concerns about their ability to self-educate their children from home?
Well, I'm going to start with something that doesn't sound very reassuring, but I assure you it will be. It is hard for all parents to teach their children. Even teachers really struggle to teach their own kids. So you must feel, if you're struggling a bit, you are not alone. It's not you. There's nothing weird about you. I think parents need to probably just accept that this is going to be challenging for everybody. They're not particularly doing a bad job at all. And there's going to have to be a degree of kindness that we're all going to have to give ourselves in this new world order. So importantly, we work with, at Cluey, we work with homeschooling parents, and we have been well before COVID-19. And often it's just about making strategic decisions about how much you want to focus on that direct instruction and how much time you want to give kids to do work on their own. And we can talk about that a bit more in a minute. So it's really about being strategic and making some sort of careful decisions about how you're going to use your time.
Wonderful. Well, to begin with, we published your article, and the title of the article is Expert Advice for Teaching Your Child at Home. So for a parent who hasn't read the article yet, could you please just give us an overview of what it's about and just what inspired you to write it?
Well, as I said, we've been dealing with homeschooling parents for some time. And so a lot of this advice we've already tested with parents who've been homeschooling. We really felt at Cluey that there were going to be the inevitable questions and that parents feel a bit at sea because most parents have never anticipated that they're going to have to be in this situation. Yes. So we just wanted to give some bite-sized advice just to start with. So the 10 tips, I'm happy to roll through them just as sort of very quick little things, and then we can get into more detail in a minute. So the first thing is to steer clear of holiday mode with structure. I know that for Victorian parents, for example, at the moment it's holidays, they're going to roll into homeschooling, and you need to make the distinction between what feels like holiday, what feels like homeschooling. The important thing is to start with some structure, start the day, start the learning day at the same time as kids start their learning day when they go to school. So it's about signaling a distinction. Yep. The second thing is to be learning space ready. And by that we mean actually specify and delineate space for learning. Even if it's a kitchen table, make sure that it isn't in the middle of the milk and the cereal and all those other things, so that you know that that's learning space. The third thing, set the tone. Now, a lot of schools are saying that kids should be working in their school uniform. I think that's a challenge. I think that's going to be a fight, and I'm not sure that any parent wants to fight anything they don't have to fight, just out of pajamas. That's a good start. Clothes are good. Screen time is not the enemy is tip number 4. And by that we mean there is a difference between using the screen for learning and communication and using it for games. Here we are, Rachel, you and I are talking to each other via Zoom. We're beaming out to people all over the place. Technology is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for connection. So screens are not your enemy. They can do something that we need at this time. The 5th tip, break content into chunks. So don't spend Monday on maths, Tuesday on English, Wednesday on science. Chunk things down and use a timetable and a structure so that you keep things varied. Tip number 6, which is my favorite tip, read. Keep reading. If in doubt, if you can do nothing else, just get the kids to read. And can I suggest that parents are the best, as you said, the parents are the first teachers. They're our best models. So if you want your kids to love reading, you've got to read yourself. There's also evidence that the same gender parent needs to do the reading. So it's not just mum reading, it's dad reading too. Let your child be the teacher is tip number 7. That's about encouraging children to teach you what they're learning. I think that's a great tip. We might spend a bit more time on that in a minute. 8, keep learning fun. Don't feel that silence means learning or that learning means silence. Sometimes fun, laughing is all part and parcel of the learning process. Nice. When kids have fun, the brain releases more dopamine. They have a positive attitude towards learning. This is all good. 9, feedback, feedback, feedback. It's all about giving feedback. Again, I think this is something we can delve into more detail, Rachel, because it's complex for parents. And finally, and this was my first thing, and I think that the most important, number 10, go easy on yourself. This is not going to be easy. You're not going to get it right. It's going to be okay.
Yes. Well, I think for everyone watching, when you read the article, we go into a lot more detail within those paragraphs. But thank you for giving us an overview on the top 10 tips. Definitely we'll have a link at the bottom of the introduction paragraph for everybody to read the article. But let's get stuck into the 3 key questions. So question number 1, how do I get started with teaching my child at home?
Well, good question. The first thing is, I think you've got to set the tone, as I said. So if we're talking about how I get started, how do I get started? Day 1, homeschooling. Start the same time as kids start school. They'll still get a lie in because there's no commute. So you don't need to fight that battle. Make sure everyone's dressed. Make sure everyone's had their breakfast and all those sorts of things, because you need to make it clear that this is a bit different from holiday, and this is probably a bit different from any other way that you've been at home together as a family. So it's important to have that distinction. And it is probably, for many parents, they're going to be working at the same time as kids are going to be learning.
Yes.
So it's about setting up the workspace so that you are there and they are there, and that you can actually shift focus from work to them quite quickly. I think I don't think there's a problem with doing that. If you have the luxury of everybody having a study in a separate room, that's terrific. But I actually would suggest that certainly for younger children, I'd have them, even if they have a desk in their bedroom, I'd have them in the public space so that you're all working together, because they're going to get lonely. And you're going to have you'll have a better eye on what they're actually doing. So it's about setting up that space and that environment and that atmosphere that is focusing on learning. And I would be definitely prepping them the night before. So don't throw them in. I do a lot of discussion about this, a lot of preparation, and making sure that you co-construct some of it. So I wouldn't just say, this is what we're going to do. I'd certainly say, so I think we might do it this way. What are your thoughts? And incorporate some of their advice, because them helping to drive this is going to make life a lot easier.
And with Cluey, I mean, you've been, as you've mentioned, coaching parents for some time with homeschooling. What sort of challenges with these tips have you found, and throughout your career so far, that parents generally sort of encounter And what are the most like general ones that they sort of
Yep.
roadblocks?
It's a good question. I think for a lot of parents, they just don't feel confident, particularly with those fundamental building blocks of education, that numeracy, literacy, maths, English, those fundamentals which we know are so very important. I think parents feel that they're not necessarily well equipped to teach that. We find, Chloe, that a lot of our parents now and before have been looking for maybe 1 or 2 hours of that kind of direct instruction from us, so that they can actually relax a little bit, because they may feel much more confident doing the more the more general knowledge kind of support with geography and history and even science, and they feel more comfortable with that, but they feel that they could get the maths and English wrong. So that's where certainly we can provide support, and there are other providers who can provide that kind of support. And it takes a lot of pressure off parents, because they don't feel that they know how to teach fractions or how to teach algebra or how to teach essay writing. And those, we do know that those are key. And I think there's been a certain amount of concern that without those, kids are going to have gaps.
Yes. Well, let's get stuck into question number 2. How long should a parent be expecting to homeschool their children each day?
Okay, good question. First up, I don't think parents should be seeing this, particularly for younger kids, as being a 5 or 6 hour through a screen experience for their children. Not like school. I don't think that teachers are going to expect to do that. It will be very difficult to maintain that degree of focus. So for a start, there is a general rule that for younger students up to year 3, we're looking maybe up to about 2 hours of intensive learning. It doesn't mean that there's not more general learning, but of intensive direct instruction. For our senior students in years 11 and 12, that might stretch out to 6 to 8 hours, because they've got high stakes. It's high stakes for them. We might talk about them a bit in a minute. But so it's not that you as a parent teacher are going to be doing direct instruction for 5 or 6 hours for every child. So you need to intersperse. You might, if you think about everything in hour blocks, and that hour is made up of 3 20-minute sections. For younger students, they're going to possibly do 20 minutes with a break and another 20 minutes. For older students, they can concentrate for longer. But I would suggest that you break the day up into a subject in the morning, maths, say, and then some time, and then English in the middle of the day, and keep things moving so that the kids aren't being bored. And in between, there will be exercises that the school will give them. There will be opportunities to practice what they've done. There'll be reading to do. There are lots of other things which are also educational, which you can get them to do, which doesn't mean that you are the direct instructor. You can get on with your own work, in other words, and sort of be there to supervise and to support them.
Okay, so to clarify, if we just sort of break this down into, say, three or 4 groups, for a parent with a child in preschool, how many hours would you suggest with that they should be homeschooling per day? What would you suggest if we would say that?
I would say up to 2 hours. I think very little people, they are not going to have the ability to concentrate. Mm-hmm. And it's actually about keeping them doing things and playing, because for most little kids, playing is learning. So the fact that they're playing doesn't mean they're not learning. So you should be calm about that.
Yes. So, and for a parent with a child in primary school and up to grade 3, as mentioned, how many hours a day should they be?
I think up to grade 3, we're looking at about 2 hours, maybe up to 3. Then moving up, so when they in grades 5 and 6, say, we're looking at more about 4 hours. Again, it's not all going to look like you are in control of their learning. They will be doing exercises and practicing and writing, a lot of work on their fine motor skills as well as their computer skills.
As well. And then after grade 6, you were saying for secondary, 4+ hours.
I think we're starting to increase. So for 7 and 8, it's incremental, depends on the child, but I think we're looking at sort of 4, 5, and then in 9 and 10 around 6 hours, and then for 11 and 12 up to 8 hours, because they really need to get that work in.
Yes. Okay. Let's get stuck into the next question. What should I be wary of when it comes to teaching children at home?
Okay. Well, I think that we'll talk about two things. The first thing is how they access online material and what they do with it. And the second thing is how to give feedback, because I think these are two very important bits of advice. The first thing is we know there are lots of resources online. Galleries and museums have put their collections online so that you can tour around them, which is terrific. I mean, how fantastic. There are also, of course, as there have always been, great resources on YouTube, great documentaries, films. There's a lot of good stuff out there. My warning is to be careful what you do with the content. So all this sort of stuff tends to position us as passive consumers of information. The important thing for learning is active engagement. So I would say, by all means, encourage your kids to access this material, obviously the right material, but use it judiciously. That is to say, get them to do something with it, because it's in repurposing what you've watched into something else, writing a story about it, giving a presentation, teaching your younger brother about it, whatever it may be. It's in doing that you lay down the neural pathways which will help you to understand that material and remember it. So the challenge is to make a decision about what you need to do with it. So whatever film it might be, it's not just watching it, it's what's next. What do I do with it next? And you need to think as a parent, what would I get them to do that will both help them to learn about that content and actually practice a different skill? So the skill of composing a story, the skill of writing an essay, the skill of doing a PowerPoint presentation, whatever it is that you might feel is useful, that is really what the key is. So that's the first thing, and I think that's really important. And the second thing is, once they've done that, that gives you as a parent the opportunity to provide them with feedback. Because feedback is the single most valuable intervention that any educator can give a child. And you are now the educator as the parent, so give them feedback. And that means not necessarily just saying, oh, that was great. It's more, talk to them about how they went about doing it. How did they approach the process? What was their application like? Did they really focus? Were they creative in how they went about doing whatever it is that you've asked them to do? You don't need to tell them necessarily that they were brilliant. And I would always warn against empty praise. So don't say, oh, you're fantastic, you're clever. They know you love them. The important thing is to give them meaningful feedback that will help them understand how to do the good things again and how not to do the things they did less well again. Mm-hmm. So it's about, you really applied yourself. That was a creative approach. Maybe what you could consider doing next time is, so that you're giving them very strategic advice and that they're learning those skills as well. So those two things: use online material judiciously, provide feedback in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm. A few questions with that. What online material would you be suggesting parents using? You've mentioned about the museums, which I think is absolutely brilliant. Is there any other online tools that you recommend?
There are so many online tools, it's hard to pick them out. I think that, as I said, asynchronous tools, so the educational tools that are out there that students access in their own time. By asynchronous, I mean there's no direct communication. They are great for a while, but they tend not to give very good individualized feedback. So it all comes down to that question. I would make sure that some of the screen time that you're giving them is for direct communication, whether the school is providing that, which they may well be doing, or whether you're finding a way to connect with other people or other educators, as we do at Cluey. I think I would definitely I'd put a bit more time into how they're going to connect with people using technology. By all means, use those asynchronous tools, but just mere gamification of learning doesn't actually give them the guidance that they need. Yes. They love it because it's a game, but I'd be wary about overdoing the gaming. because I think actually they don't learn as much as all that.
So with that, what open-ended questions and phrases should parents be asking their children in a teacher's shoes at home for the moment? Could you give us some key phrases that parents can be asking their children, open-ended, that will be able to at least spark that conversation and engage that learning?
Great question, Rachel. For a start, so when I talk about authentic questions, so we're talking about open-ended questions, which means that there is no one answer. And authentic questions are questions that the asker doesn't necessarily know the answer to. So when you're asking a question, it's not that you don't have an answer for it, but you don't know what the answer the child will give. So you try and avoid guess what's in my head questions, but you're asking questions that will genuinely create them thinking and will start a conversation between you and the child. So a really good one, a really all-purpose one is, what makes you say that? So when a child answers a question, so they may say something, definitely what makes you say that will make them think about the process that they went through to come up with that answer. So what makes you say that? Why do you think they have done that? So when you're watching a film together or reading a story, why do you think the character has done that? Because there's no one answer to that. I mean, every child will answer differently. And I think also it's, what did you feel? What did that make you feel? These are very personal questions and there's no right answer. And the real secret is it's giving kids the skills to articulate their thinking. And that in the end is really powerful.
Yes. So with that, outside of the national curriculum and the distant learning, what else do you recommend that parents can be doing to spark that learning for their children around the home in isolation?
I think around the home, yes. So we've got books. I'm going to keep talking about books, but reading is really important. The other thing is that the kitchen has all these wonderful things in it. All those ingredients, cooking together, basic chemistry lessons, following recipes, really good. It seems to adults to be really obvious, but that process of understanding that one thing, the causal connection, that you have to follow things in an order, is really powerful. And I think, to be honest, it's just a great way of bonding with your kids. I remember the cooking lessons that my mother gave me, and I think it's a wonderful way of teaching kids how to be systematic, how to clean up after themselves, how to be part of a community. We're going to be relying on kids to carry their weight a lot more around the house because we're all going to be jammed together. And these are really valuable life lessons. We are teaching them that may not have direct academic connections, but are really valuable nonetheless. So I would take every opportunity to communicate with your kids and talk with them about things. And doing things like cooking together is a great opportunity for those shoulder-to-shoulder conversations. We know that kids are going to be feeling anxious and a little unsettled, and you want to give them the opportunity to talk through how they feel, but you don't want to do that in a way that's too direct, too focused. You don't want to freak them out. So the best way to do that is when you're doing something else. So cooking together, shoulder-to-shoulder conversations can be really powerful.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything else in your time at Cluey, in your time in the industry, that you have encountered that we haven't shared today that's going to be useful tips for families at this time? Is there anything else that we've covered? Haven't covered, that we could share?
Look, I think, as I said, we've been working with parents for a long time, and I think we're seeing that for a lot of parents, they're not going to be able to do it all themselves. They shouldn't expect to be able to do it all themselves. We can support. I would also suggest that for parents to connect with each other. Maybe share some of the responsibility to do that direct instruction, and get kids in together, working together. We have small group courses and programs for kids, and that's great because they're going to feel pretty lonely. They're used to working together at school and they're going to be on their own, and so working together as a small group is a great way to maintain those sorts of peer connections, which is something also that they're going to be craving, I think.
Well, look, you've given us incredible information today, very insightful, extremely helpful, and as I mentioned earlier, a godsend for this time. And if parents have got any other questions, they want to learn more about Cluey Learning, where can they find you?
Well, the best thing is to go to the website, which is clueylearning.com.au. The other thing to bear in mind is we have some free webinars for parents. I think the first one is next week, but all that information is also available. We're putting that out on Facebook as well. These are free webinars. Parents can send questions through, and I will do my very best to answer all their questions and to make sure that we support you all in this interesting new time.
Well, Dr. Selina, thank you so much for your time today, and I really hope to have another chat in the not too distant future. But thank you so much. Take care, and we'll speak.
You're very welcome. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.